purchase it from the marketplace. Now I have the honor of introducing to you my mentor, Viktoras Kulvinskas. Viktoras has been a mentor to me since long before he ever met me. But when he did meet me and he tasted my food, he said, "You must teach this to chefs. Every chef in the world should know how to make food like this. It should be on every menu, and you're the one to do it." Of course, I couldn't say no. So within 2 weeks, Living Light Culinary Arts Institute was born. I was an institute of one, but I knew I would grow into it, and I did. And I can thank Viktoras for that, because if it hadn't been for him, I never would have taken the leap of faith. I thought, if he says I should do it, I should do it. So I want to thank him. He is a pioneer of the live food movement. In fact, we think of him as the father of living foods. He was born in Lithuania. He had a career as a consultant with the Apollo mission, MIT, the Smithsonian, and Harvard University. He and Dr. Ann founded the Hippocrates Health Institute in Boston in 1970. And in 1971, the Lithuanian raw mystic, which is what we would also call him, wrote Survival into the 21st Century, offering a comprehensive survival strategy to 2012 and beyond. And at this Expo, he's going to be talking about surviving and thriving into 2012. A visionary, scientist, educator, researcher, raw food chef, and author, Viktoras has mentored many of the key people in live foods today, including Gabriel Cousins, Dick Gregory, Smokey Saltillo, Sherry Soria, Karen Calabrese, Dr. Brian Clement, Dr. Edward Howell, and many others. Viktoras is also an ordained bishop of the First Christian Essene Church. He is not only a scientific person, a kinesthetic person, but also a highly realized spiritual person. And it is my great honor to welcome him here once again. Please help me welcome Viktoras Kulvinskas.
Thank you. May the Om be with you. It's such a pleasure once again to return to Sherry, Dan, and the community. And we are honored today by the sun rays to really know what it means to feel light and feel bright. There's a myth many years ago, just like there's a myth about nutrition, myth of Sisyphus. Many of you have read it. Sisyphus was condemned by the gods for introducing fire to humanity, to roll a huge stone up the hill, and then the stone rolled down, and the task was repeated for immortality, for bringing fire to humanity. We see now humanity has been doing the same thing, the way of Sisyphus, because of abuse of fire. The fire has devastated humanity. It has devastated the food. It takes wisdom to use knowledge, and only wisdom comes through communicating with the source, allowing the divine puppeteer to act through you. For we have become the hands and feet of the Creator. But when we use it to glorify ourselves, then we become lost in the mire of job, rolling that stone just above broke, in a state of slavery instead of the freedom of cosmic enlightenment. The fire has destroyed the value in the food, and it has changed you to disease, to death, and depression. All of these are very much related to consumption of what you are ingesting. The flagship of nutrition, the one that is most sensitive to the impact of fire, is enzymes. As low as 118 degrees for long enough time in a wet environment will disintegrate the enzymes and make them bioinactive, reducing them to simple proteins, which the body can use it both as building blocks as well as degrading it into amino acids and restructuring it into desired formats for recreating your body as it melts down due to acidic dietary choices and lifestyles. There's a very strong interrelationship between the alkalinity and enzymes. For food that is enzymatically active, it is alkaline, and all non-enzymatically foods are acid forming on the system, and they create a tremendous amount of stress, challenging not only our immune system, but weakening our electrovoltage potential so that continuously you degrade ever more so into the cycles of aging and eventually corruption of your body where regeneration is impossible without radical intervention. And we do that at Hippocrates Health Institute and many other places, including right here at Sherry and Dan's. They can tell you just as many miraculous stories of students who have gone into the enzymatic nutrition, whether gradually or radically fast, and they've seen miraculous healings occur within this temple. And it's being practiced in many homes. And I'll be discussing in 2012 protocol why by 2012 there'll be a radical shift in consciousness in terms of enzymatic nutrition. What is fascinating in Megatrends by John Nesbitt, he stated that in this decade we will see in the field of biology, they took 10 important trends that you can anticipate and count on, and they have been very consistently right on. And he said that in the field of biology, enzymes will be creating an influence on our culture exceeding all the impacts from chemistry and physics of the previous century. And in this discussion, you will get a tip of the iceberg of the impact that enzymes can have. Your body is structurally made out of protein, and enzymes are proteins, but not all proteins are enzymes. Enzymes have something extra special. They have a nanotechnology, you might say, implanted in these proteins, and they're kind of the blue-collar workers in your body. Matter of fact, they are the determining process, determining signature of what is alive and what is dead. When it's alive, it's enzymatically active. When it's dead, it's non-enzymatically active. The human organism and all life forms in nature tries to maintain highest level of integrity. However, due to the dramatic cycles of nature, which are almost repetitive, during the last 600 years, 1,000 years, we have had 6 ice ages. There's easy enough knowledge and wisdom to be lost and to be living in a survival strategy, trying to keep your butt warm. The fire is important. Living in caves and having no access to food outside of whatever you could find. And a lot of the food was very tasteless. Fire seemed to have improved the taste and made many unedible items edible because it disorganized not only enzymes, but also degraded the alkaloids, which could be very poisonous. So some of the poisonous plants became edible when subject to fire, though at a great expense to the human organism, though at the same time filled the belly and made one feel comfortable as the organism adapted itself to the consumption of cooked food. And it became the tradition from generation to generation. And as long as the cooked food was whole cooked foods, especially cooked in a non-microwave oven fashion, in other words, heated quite often and not thoroughly cooked, it had quite a significant amount of enzymatic reserves. However, this tradition became the way, and it enabled the people to live a moderate, healthy life into their 60s and 70s, and reproducing successfully, having good bone structure, carrying genetic material. Dr. Weston Price, in his book, Nutritional Degeneration, did an exceptional job of covering the primitive tribes that thrived in this fashion that I described. They included also a little bit of animal protein. But once food became degraded and disorganized, then they noted in this particular text, observing the individuals, degenerative diseases became spread. And we have seen, even within our medical community, if you look at the naturopath, you look at the medical books written 70 years or earlier ago, they were all naturopathic practitioners with hardly any medical intervention. And you go back 100 years, in medical books there was no mention of cancer or cardiovascular diseases. They are the consequences of overstressing the organism with heat-treated animal protein that creates a degradation in your body's ability to transport oxygen. When you are flooded with a high volume of incompletely metabolized protein fragments, the body adapts itself to this at a great expense, namely innovating and exaggerated boosting its immune function by way of, first of all, increased white blood cells. A person on a raw diet living in an uncivilized environment would have hardly any white blood cells. They are adaptive and they serve a very important function. When you are eating cooked food, it's called post-meal leukocytosis. Immediately as you're indulging in the cooked food without enzymatic support, the white blood cell count will go up by 300 to 500%. And if you are nibbler and eating processed foods all day long, it never drops if you eat 2-3 meals a day, after the meal, within a matter of 2 hours, it goes back to normal levels. But if you are a nibbler, having your milky bar, and you're having your candies and heat-treated nuts and seeds, as well as chips of all sorts, it never drops down. It just keeps going up. That's why when the volume of white blood cells increases to such a high level, and they are part of your police force, they're your army defending you against the invasion of processed and completely metabolized food fragments, as well as viruses, pathogenic microbes, as well as environmental chemicals. And you know how radically our environment has changed. All of these summation leads to exaggerated activity in the defense force, to the point where what happens? You get into a situation where it's shoulder to shoulder the white blood cell count that has been continuously growing inside of your body, and you have an overpopulation of white blood cells. Now, what is this overpopulation of white blood cells called? Can anyone volunteer a name? Leukemia. It's spreading like wildfire among children. Combination of television-induced and dysfunctional family emotional turmoil, junk food, all of these things, as well as the chemicalized environment, as well as being immersed in a chemicalized bedroom, chemicalized clothing, all of these are aggravating the immune system function. And being fed enzymeless nutrition. Dr. Leskovar, a pioneer in enzymology, published a paper. His research showed that within 20 minutes after taking an enzyme capsule, the white blood cell diminishes, because now you have a higher density of bullets, which is the bullets of the white blood cells, to try to address the issues of melting down aggressive environment, whether it's viruses, microbes, pathogenic microbes, or it is incompletely metabolized cooked food. Also, the natural killer cells, within 20 minutes of administering it, increased by 1,300%, macrophages by 700%, a radical shift in empowerment. These are the driving forces of your immune system, your defense strategy within a toxic environment. And we are seeing, due to internal enzymatic depletion and accelerated aging, 21st century diseases are spreading like wildfire. AIDS, which is an immune dysfunctioning condition, treated successfully with radical dietary alteration, with a high influx of enzymes and alkalinity by way of fresh vegetable juices, by way of fresh vegetable green smoothies, and leading to recovery in a matter of a couple months. That includes leukemia. And realkalizing is such an important component that in 1972, Dr. Leskovar, a Polish medical, Dr. Kulikowski. I got my Polish and my Russian associates mixed up. Dr. Kulikowski published in Lancet, as well as Polish medical journal, studies with infantile leukemia and treated successfully with an alkaline, low-protein diet. And they went back to traditional eating, leukemia again. They went back to this program, again cleaned up. And he said The only reason we didn't have 100% is we haven't developed an optimal nutritional program like what is being offered at Cherries, what is offered at Hippocrates Health Institute, what is offered at Tree of Life of Dr. Cousins, and so many other similar institutions. Realkalizing and enzymes are the greatest carriers of alkaline minerals into the interior. And minerals increase the enzyme activity. Dr. Kauchikov showed the impact of the heat treatment and white blood cell increased production. Dr. Hogevar showed the impact of minerals, the alkaline minerals, in terms of strength of enzyme action, longevity of enzyme action, and diversity of enzyme activity. Everything that goes on inside of your body, from you sitting and taking notes, your mechanical movement of your hands, your posture, it's all enzymatically orchestrated and maintained. Every breath you take in, it's enzymatically carried off. When you have a fever, your body increases temperature by 1-2 degrees. Why is it doing that? And everybody tries to intervene to the temperature issue. However, the body never makes mistakes. It does everything for the longevity and survival of the organism. For every degree rise in temperature of your body, the enzyme activity increases by about 20 to 30%. They become hyperactive. So, several degrees rise in temperature means you practically double the enzymatic workforce. That's why your body increases fever. Enzymes are the main active forces in the time of disease. When you get your colds, it's a meltdown process of the plaque, the mucoplaque that you have built up in the respiratory system. It's melted into a liquid, slimy format that you can expel through your nasal passages, cough it up, as well as pass certain volume of it through your skin, as well as urine and defecation. The body is in an increased mode of elimination, trying to bring you back to normal. Enzymes are excitedly enough very key to digestion. Do you realize that the number one reason for hospitalization, visits to the doctors, as well as death, is enzymatic depletion and or exhaustion? Statistical Clearinghouse for Statistics on Digestive Disorders reports yearly this information, and you can find it in cyberspace. Comes out of government figures. The breakdown of your digestion, two things starts happening. It leads to incomplete metabolism and starches turning sour and creating a severe acidic, which is a reflection of the exhaustion of one of the important enzyme components, amylase. Amylase is an enzyme that acts on starches. Dr. Sumner showed that by the time an average American reaches middle age, they have lost over 95% of their amylase. That's why, as the amylase diminishes, you have in the United States an acidic crisis. The fastest selling drugs are those to correct acidity, associated with not only lack of hydration, inadequate hydration, but lack of alkaline, raw foods. And that does not include, as raw foods, going over to some salad bar, purchasing a salad with iceberg, lots of tomatoes, as well as cucumbers and few other ingredients, and then embalming it with the traditional salad dressings, which is severely acidic, never to overcome by the alkalinity that might be present in the inorganic vegetables, which have only about 5% alkalinity in comparison to the organic vegetables. I mean, when people complain about the cost of organic food, well, it's a bargain, the organic food, if you're shopping for nutrition in terms of nutrient density, whereas the inorganic has hardly anything. Matter of fact, on the inorganic meal plan, according to Department of Agriculture, in 1936 already, according to them, they said 99% of Americans had a deficiency in one or more essential minerals due to erosion, depletion of the soil. So, the acidic condition predominates. And you're going to offset it by eating great raw salads, by adding to it a raw soaked seed protein dressing that makes it totally delightful, or with avocado, minimizing the use of concentrated oils. That's when you're getting superior fast foods and moving your biomarkers into a more youthful self-expression. For you are the master of aging process. You can either accelerate the aging process or you can reverse it. I was about 50 years older some years ago when I was a teenager. And this is what is happening with our children. Our children are suffering from old age diseases that were totally unknown, as I said, a century ago. Cancer, arthritis, cardiovascular diseases. Over 40% of our children are suffering from old age. A significant number, over 60% of them, are lost their reproductive capacity. And our great-grandparents had a better erectile tissue performance than our teenagers. Matter of fact, the fastest recreational drug selling at high schools is Viagra. Our culture is degenerating, yet you offer them enzymatic nutrition, especially sprouted grains. Yes, Doug, sprouted grains do work. The consequence is regeneration of the reproductive functions, and the documentation is in my book. And you can find my book on the internet, Survival in the 21st to 1st century.com, with a 20% discount. With the biomarkers enzymatically, there's such a difference between when life forms live from beginning to end, and quite often their end is terminated violently by a predator deciding that they're hungry and they're going to have you for lunch. So, very hard to determine the potential for physical immortality. However, if you take a look at whales and other mammalians living in the ocean with optimal full spectrum of minerals from the sea, every known mineral is in the sea, to the exercise and all the other good things that they do. If you looked at their nutritional profile, it will be very similar from great-grandfather to the infant. You can look at 4, 6 generations. There is no difference in enzymatic concentration between the child and the great-grandparent in the raw-eating mammalians. However, if you look at human species, the infant has 1,000 times more enzymes than a 70-year-old, with the exception of myself. Because I overloaded myself not only with enzymes, supplementation, but also enzyme saturation. When I started with raw food diet, I couldn't digest proteins or starches, so nuts and seeds were indigestible. That was prior to our discovery, or my discovery, of soaking and also fermentation, 2 pre-digestive processes that release the enzymes in the seed and lead to you being able now to digest and have access to the amino acid as well as also to essential fats and pre-digested carbs. I was the poster child for Anorexic Association at that time. 90 pounds for 2 years. Yet I used to work 16, 18 hours a day within the Hippocrates environment. Yet I believed in what I was doing, even though with the insanity and the visual demonstration that I must have been insane to do something like this when no one else was doing. Veganism was totally unknown. It took survival in the 21st century and one generation, 20 years before veganism became an accepted position in our society. And physician, PCRM.org, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine.org, PCRM, has taken the posture. Not only is vegan diet adequate, but also anything contrary to vegan diet is contrary to good health. There's a follow-up study, the China study, which shows that their conclusion drawn that we have not had long enough evolutionary history to adapt ourselves to animal protein, and especially cooked animal protein. On raw animal protein, as an example, the Eskimos, which the word itself means one who eats raw, they managed to thrive and do well right into their 90s, keeping their teeth, their hair, and everything else like that. And in came traders, missionaries, and the result was many of them developed the habit of cooking their meat. The consequence, within one generation, the longevity was reduced by 50% into their 40s. And for the first time, there was cancer, heart diseases, as being the causes for death. That's how disorganizing it is on your system, heat-treated protein. Much easier to handle are plant-based proteins, and even when they're heat-treated, but it continuously activates the post-meal leukocytosis and diminishing and draining your enzymatic reserves, so that as you get older, your enzymatic reserves continue to diminish. Eventually, your protein levels drop down to such insignificant levels that there's a complete breakdown occurring in the management of the food, which becomes macromolecules of crude starch, fat, and protein, and stresses your body in terms of trying to find what to do with this inventory of storage. So you see, one of the best examples of exaggerated volume of heat-treated fats and processed sugars is the volume of storage of fat that is occurring within our nation. We're looking at well over 45% are considered morbidly obese by the kind of standards that are set I would say it's closer to 60 and 70% are considered obese in relationship to healthy standards, because we don't want to have such lousy statistics, so we adjust our parameters, what is considered obesity. And I worked in the obesity industry with enzymatic nutrition. Our clients, which were 400 to 1,000 pounds in weight, were losing as much as 2 pounds per day on a consistent, ongoing. At Hippocrates, one of my associates right now living in Costa Rica, he raises wheatgrass in his 60s. About 5 years ago, he started the Hippocrates program, lost over 200 pounds. Yet he was close to death. He was signed up for a liver transplant, and somebody said, eat raw. And it was like God's light lit up, and he did eat raw, and then found out about Hippocrates, and then ate superior raw, which centers around great volume of greens and sprouted foods. Over 85%, 90% of our food is composed of these components. And about the 20% is made up of fruit, which is eaten only a couple times a week, though on a healthy individual, one can do much more than that, especially if they are accessing tree-ripened fruit. That is everything, because when fruit is not tree-ripened, it's acidic forming. In spite of the fact that on an alkaline-oriented diet, you can handle as much as 20% of acidic foods by way of the fermented foods and by way of some of the more acid type of fruit. However, the ultimate direction is follow the gorilla, follow the anthropoid apes. Greens are really the key, and tree-ripened fruit. But greens are the ultimate food in terms of power of the elephant, power of the gorilla, power of the hypothalamus. Primarily, we are enzymatically active individuals, and in order to support that, we need to do likewise. What we associate with, we become like. If we, in the words of Jesus in the Seeing Gospel of Peace, he states, from death comes death, and from life comes life. If you want life, you will associate with living humans instead of those who are on their way to the mortuary, and associate with living foods so that they will enliven you, increase your electrovoltage potential, increase your enzymatic makeup. And one of the things you will see is not only lines will disappear. I had many lines on my face, but my iris was black with 4 stress rings. Right now it's blue. Now, not everybody turns bluish iris, but with cleansing and detoxification, you'll either have light brown colors if you're from Afro-American, Mediterranean, Asiatic origin. And if you're one of the white folks, you'll have blue-colored, blue-green. That's signs of internal detoxification and ability to handle high stress. But what we see is degradation and degeneration all over in the facial history. Whether you look at the tongue, or you look at the lips, or you look at the ears, or you look at the iris, it's telling tremendously about what is going on internally. So enzymatic nutrition is the foundation, and it has been discovered already within the medical community that is doing some really far-out research. Dr. Chin-Po Kim published several papers treating successfully with 79% success in all forms of cancer and leading to recovery with 5-year follow-ups, so they're considered cure. Though if you want to really learn about cancer, you'll get a copy of the DVD. You can get it at Hippocrates and other places. Healing Cancer. It goes through the whole history. and many of the leaders that are involved in the raw and vegan movement. As I said, cancer was unknown prior to the time when most people lived on unprocessed food and predominantly on a plant-based diet because they could not afford heat-treated animal protein. That was for the rich. And the rich also had shorter lifespan and presence of degenerative diseases. One of the most ancient histories, besides the Eskimos of being raw-oriented, the plant-based diet were the Essenes. And what is interesting, historian Josephus reports in the community of over 4,000 individuals, their longevity was 400% longer than the longevity of the rest of the population of Europe and Mediterranean. They were in their 120s. Plant-based diet around sprouted grains, sprouted seeds, as well as baby greens of all sorts. And healthy and vital, enzymatic nutrition is in more primitive cultures. As example, Ecuador. I was in Vilcabamba, up in the mountains. You see seniors in their 100 years plus. You can read National Geographic's January 1973 issue that was devoted to longevity. Enzymatic, plant-based diet, individuals at 100, 120 years, riding horses, working in the fields, climbing mountains. Even to the point where 2 years ago, a friend of mine came back from Vilcabamba and reported a 70-year-old woman gave birth and was raising a healthy infant. The whole idea of hormonal disappearance, just like in Genesis, you find not only the diet for humanity in I-29, but also you find the story of longevity. They were having children at 300, 400 years of age. Why are we expiring so early? It's the stress that we create on our organism, the hardest work by consumption of heat-treated foods, cooked foods at high temperatures. The animals... And the animals kingdom, you find the longevity, if one uses markers, biological markers, instead of the number of times one has gone around the sun, you find animals are living 40 to 80 times the cycle of fertility. So if it takes 6 months to reach fertility from birth, and if it's 40 times, that would be 20 years living. Well, with humans, and that's a rule that applies right throughout the whole animal kingdom. The humans would be easily living 600 years. 15 times 40, that's 600 years. And we'll be discussing at the workshop how physical immortality is established, not only in your belief system, but also certain biological processes which were very well researched and attested by studies that deals with not only dietary, but also cleansing and detoxification. Let's join the wild animal world where there is no disease, where they all eat alkaline diet. They all choose to eat foods that are appropriate for their physiognomy and their anatomy. We would be best suited toward the greens. And experience longevity from enzymatic alkaline nutrition. We are the only life forms that have disease, and we are the only ones that are doing the cooking of our nutritional fuel, disorganizing it, creating something that creates stress and major overwork, and losing up to 80% of your physical energy associated with the digestive stress. After a meal, most people need either coffee or a cigarette or cocaine in order to feel energized. So, you have taken the first step and the second step. There's many educational and support groups. Join your raw food potlucks. A better name is needed unless they're doing pot. That's a good alternative to Alcoholics Anonymous. You need the raw Anonymous, and I have a suggestion for a name, MEAT, Meat Eaters Transitional, Meat Eaters Associated Transition. We need to get ourselves hooked up to one another, even if it's only cyberspace. I'm going to have a couple of questions, so if someone would just speak up, whoever is most bold and aggressive, just shout out a question, and I'll try not to mislead you too far. Speak up loud.
If you have nut allergies, what do you do with that?
Okay, good question. First of all, I want to say I am not a doctor. I don't diagnose, treat, or provide prescriptions. If you have food allergies that includes nuts, you can overcome those things, but initially what you need to do is saturate yourself with enzymes. It's an indication that you have a severe enzymatic exhaustion of proteolytic enzymes, and the crude protein that is found in nuts, seeds, can challenge your system. Sometimes you're challenged more by certain components of the seed, like a lot of people are challenged by the almonds as an example, or peanuts. Like almonds are noted for a high concentration of also cyanic acid, which is cyanide, and it's deadly poison. And if you don't have adequate volumes in your cells of beta-rhodinase, which is an enzyme that neutralizes that cyanic acid and passes out by urine, you end up aggravating your immune system radically. So there's many different reasons why you could be allergic. Get into detoxification, cleansing, and enzyme support, and use enzymes with meals and in between meals, and you'll find in a matter of a couple months you will not be allergic to nuts and seeds. Introduce them gradually. I was allergic to nuts and seeds myself when I started with raw food program. I was tested in my mid-50s for allergies. I was not allergic to anything. That included also chocolate, milk, dairy products of all sorts, as well as also meat products. Not that I ever bothered to consume any of these things, but what it said was the immune system was rebuilt and the digestive system was rebuilt by a high saturation of enzymes. I wrote the first book in enzymology, published, and I wrote the introduction. About half of it was written by me, which was the original documents of Dr. Howell, and he has 500 medical journal references. I discovered that book at Harvard, the manuscripts at Harvard Medical Library. I knew I found the key to raw food nutrition in terms of at least scientific language, and that was, now it's available as food enzymes for longevity and health. I want to also mention that you can contact me. I do hold the retreats in Arkansas in the month of late September and October, as well as in November, as well as in Costa Rica. The retreats are held during the winter months of December, January, February, March, April. It's 10-day retreats from Friday to Sunday, and it's $900. And the intention is to train you to be a coach not only for yourself but others as you prepare people entry into the new millennium, which is targeted at around 2012. Whatever crisis that will come down the pike doesn't matter, but this is a preparing for you to thrive, to be super strong, and to get into the wellness revolution, the next $1 trillion marketplace not only be in a state of abundance, of unlimited energy and youthfulness, and have a lot of fun. I do consultations also here, and we have a special, a 30% less than what I usually charge, and you can see us at our booth. I'll be going there for a book signing after this event. Is there another question?
Viktoras, I just wanted to say
Thank you.
that Viktoras is going to be speaking again here at 12 o'clock, right
12.
after Kevin Gianni. So you'll have an opportunity to hear more of him and to ask more questions at that time. And for now, our time is up. Please help me thank Viktoras Kulvinskas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.